Hopefully this will work. And just waiting for Instagram to connect. Um, there we go. There's Instagram. All right. Welcome to Thornapple Press's live stream with Theresa Kishkan, author of The Art of Looking Back, A Painter and an Obsession and Reclaiming the Gaze, which officially comes out tomorrow. My name is Eve Rickert. I am the publisher at Thornapple Press, and I want to acknowledge that I am joining this call from the traditional unceded territories of the Lekwungen and Wasanich peoples on Vancouver Island. And welcome to our stream, Theresa. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Well, I'm Theresa Kishkan, talking to you from the north end of the Sechelt Peninsula, which is the Sechelt Swia, the sacred lands of the Sechelt people. And yes, I've lived here for 45 years and very much my home.
Great, well, welcome. And for anyone who is joining us, we are streaming live on the Thornapple channels on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. And we can see how many people are watching us, but we can't see who is watching us. If you post a comment, we will see it in the little window of our streaming software here. So if you want to identify yourself, feel free. If you want to ask a question, feel free to ask it and we'll answer it live on air if we can. So let's talk about this amazing book.
Let's go.
So let's just start with telling us about this book, what it's about and how it came to be.
Well, I've been referring to it as an accidental memoir because it's a book I never really intended to write. I didn't even know it was there to be written. And a few years ago, three things came together. My papers were purchased by the University of Victoria. And when I was sorting them, I came across a huge stack of letters from the Victoria painter, Jack Wilkinson. You might know him if you live in Victoria. He was the designer of the Carillon Tower in front of the Royal BC Museum and the mosaic in the Centennial Fountain, and a member of the Limners, a group of Victoria artists who were kind of brought together in fellowship in the 1960s. And I would have called it a intense friendship with Jack in 1978. And so I had this stack of letters, and then my daughter, who has a friend who is a paintings conservator, the friend told her that she was restoring a painting of me, a naked image of me. And when my daughter said, well, that particular painter painted women who look like my mother, the woman said to her, no, it's your mother. And I realized that there are images out there as a result of this friendship that I wasn't aware of. And then the third strand was that a painting that Jack painted of me, a portrait of me at the age of 23, hangs in the stairwell of my home, and I see it every morning as I go downstairs. And I've always felt that this portrait and my older self had something to say to one another. And the three things coming together, the letters that I had held back when my papers went to UVic, held back and reread and found a story that I had not really wanted to admit was accurate or ongoing, and the idea of paintings out there that I guess if you are the object of a painter's obsession, you can expect that there will be paintings of you. But I didn't really understand how many there would be and where they would end up, and how sort of separate I felt from them. And then the portrait, the opportunity to encounter that younger version of myself and talk to her about what had happened. That's how this book came about. I actually had no intention of publishing it until a couple of people read it and said, actually, in this moment, the Me Too moment that goes on and on and on, long after it ought to have been, dealt with and so on, this is a story that other people should hear. So I sent it to you.
And I mean, I know the story of how you ended up sending it to me, but I like the story, and I'd like to hear you tell the story of how you discovered Thornapple Press and decided that we might be a good fit with you.
Well, to be honest, I had sent it to a couple of publishers who had published earlier books of mine, and it made them uncomfortable, I think. One publisher said, who would we get to edit it? And I thought, well, an editor, it's language, sentences, structure, these are things that are sort of ongoing in a writer's life. And you expect an editor to help you make it the best possible book that it could be. So then I read a profile of you in BC Book World, and I realized that there were possibilities for this book, with a publisher who was interested in issues of consent and relationships, boundaries that we set and sometimes don't know how to set. I think as a 23-year-old being sought after by a man who was more than twice my age, I had no idea of my own agency in that. I had no idea how to set those boundaries. So I thought, well, why not try Thornapple? And the results were so gratifying. I mean, here it is, this beautiful book, beyond my expectations. It's gorgeous. The design is beautiful. The editing was so thoughtful and intelligent. The copy editing was so, again, thoughtful and intelligent. And everything about it's been a joy.
Oh, that's great to hear. It's funny because the substantive editor, Andrea, was also on the acquisitions committee and it was, you may recall, I think we were considering the book for several months. And because we wanted to publish it, but we were also like, are we ready for this book?
Well, I understand that. Yeah.
Yeah. And, but one of the things that Andrea said was that they really wanted to work on it. And that's, often a thing that comes up sometimes in our meetings is, something that someone in particular wants to work on. So you had an advocate from the beginning for, as all of the books that we acquired do, but yeah. And, it was interesting for us because it did come at a time when we were really trying to expand the boundaries of our list and take on some things that were a bit, we didn't want to be pigeonholed. Our early books were all on non-monogamy, and then we expanded into books on, bisexuality and different kinds of topics around sex and queerness and such. But we really, we had published some books on consent, and we were really interested in exploring ethics and consent further, because one of the things that we consider part of our identity, I guess, is that we publish books on love and sex and relationships, but they tend to be very intellectual books by and large, which is a very unique niche, I think.
And this one was maybe a little more literary than you would be accustomed to, in the
Which we
sense
were.
that I kind
No,
of
go ahead.
conceived it as an essay. I've been writing essays for about 30 years, and I think of it as such a capacious form that you can really do anything with it. It can stretch in any direction. I mean, the word comes from the old French, meaning to try, to measure, to weigh, so I keep that in mind when I'm writing. And I thought of this as a sort of extended essay, discrete passages knitted together the way a quilt or something might be knitted together. Um, so um, I, the literary values were important to me, but I think that the notion that it was also timely, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And we live in a world where too many relationships are not balanced in a healthy way. And I realized that that was true of this relationship, and wanted to kind of explore how that happened and to reclaim my own, sense of agency in the
Mm-hmm.
whole process.
Yeah. It's interesting. I want to ask you to talk more about that relationship and what made it unbalanced and such. And I'm also finding myself sort of hesitant because I
Mhm.
have had the experience myself about, writing about these personal experiences, and the writing itself can take so much out of you, but then the experience of having it in the world and talking about it over and over and over and doing interviews on it. And I think you're sort of at the beginning of that process. You're going to be doing some events and such. But I, I'm, I'm noticing that as I want to ask you to talk about it, I'm like, but she's already talked about it in the book, and people should just read the book, and she should only have to do it once. Um, so if you want, you can talk more about the relationship itself, but I'm actually um, interested in what it's been like for you so far, recognizing that you are sort of at the beginning of this, having brought the book into being, now having to sort of face it over and over again through this promotional process that we're going into.
Well, it's interesting because there is some distance.
Mhm.
You know, having something in a book form, it creates a little bit of a distance. And there's the distance of time. I mean, this relationship began in 1978, was this, as I said, what I thought of as an intense friendship for about 3 months. And then it continued for about 20 years, mostly by correspondence, although Jack Wilkinson did come to my home, met my husband, brought paintings for my children. And on the surface, there was this semblance of a family friend and a you know, cordial, civilized relationship. But the undercurrent, as I realized when I reread the letters, many of which were 20 pages long and passionate and obsessional and, you know, um, still trying to sort of coax me to see that I really would be better off with him. Um, that experience was unsettling, and revisiting it was unsettling. Um, and uh, I went through all sorts of feelings of shame and guilt, and I don't feel those things so much now, but I did.
Mhm.
Um, there was a marriage that broke up. I would like to say not because of me, but I think I was probably part of the reason. So, um,
Or his obsession with you.
Yeah,
may have been part of the reason. I don't think we can say that it was you. You never asked for the attention.
I felt guilty about it at first because out of the blue, these letters started to come saying, you in no way should feel responsible for breaking up my marriage.
Oh,
and
wow.
I thought, you're my friend. I mean, I thought we had a friendship. I wasn't thinking of this as something more, although I guess I intuited that he did, you know.
Do you think you might have been an excuse for the marriage breaking up?
I think that the marriage was not a particularly sound one anyway. It turned out that his wife had someone she was involved with as well. But I think they probably would have stayed together for a time anyway. They had a family home and 3 children and, you know, a role in Victoria. She was a ballet teacher. He was a painter. You know, they had a role. Big families, friends, volunteer boards, all of that.
Yeah. So let's talk about that actually, because I mean, of course, that was a big topic of discussion between you and me and between you and Andrea was, you know, the other people in this book and the decision to use, I know there are some pseudonyms and some not, so the decisions about when to use pseudonyms. And this is also something I've had to address in my own work as well, as, you know, to what extent is it, what are the ethics around telling my story when other people are implicated in that story? So can you talk about how you approach that for this book?
I think for the first draft, I used initials for people's names. And because I wasn't thinking of publishing it, I thought it was really more important to write it. But I must have been aware that there was this opportunity or danger maybe of trespassing on other people's lives. So I used initials. And when I thought deeply about it and discussed it with my husband, who's a great person to discuss these things with because he's quite sensible and also he's known me for a long time, we agreed that this was my story. And sometimes it overlapped with other people's stories. And it would be dishonest and maybe even coy not to give them a voice when our stories overlap. I think the person we might be thinking of is Jack's daughter, who...
I was also thinking of his wife, who's also named in here. That was, but yes.
And both of them are now dead. So there wasn't, you know, the opportunity to talk to them about it. I think that part of the reason that Jack noticed me in the first place was that I bore then a striking resemblance to his daughter. In fact, we met at an art opening at Utley's Gallery on East Saanich, just off of East Saanich Road, a Limner show. And there was a portrait of a girl hanging on the wall. And everyone was saying, "There's your portrait." And I'd never met him. So it was definitely a portrait of his daughter in which we looked so much alike. And I think that's what drew him to me. So it would be dishonest, I think, not to use her name when it came up. I had a lot of affection for her and admiration for her. She's a beautiful, talented, an extraordinary woman. The first time I saw her was at a Norfolk House production of Antigone, and she played Antigone. And, you know, of course she did. She was wonderful. I think she was probably 17 or 18. And she was Antigone in that play. So the Greek drama that her life resembled, I think, at that point was also something that she was able to translate to theater. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
It's been interesting to me. I mean, there are so many, I mentioned when I was talking about acquiring this book, and I said, "Are we ready for this?" I was concerned about the potential for scandal, right? The potential for it to kind of blow up in, we're a local publisher based here in Victoria, and so there are a lot of important local people implicated in this story. And I don't know if it's just that word hasn't gotten out or if it's just that people have decided not to talk about it, but I've actually been a little surprised so far by the quiet about it. And we haven't really gotten a ton of interest from local media, which did surprise me given Jack's importance in the local art scene. But I guess that was 50 years ago. So, but
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah. And maybe stories, they never go away, they never die, but
Yeah.
they go underground. And
Yeah.
I suppose there are people who will remember this story,
Mm-hmm.
though, who will remember him and his, I mean, he was very colorful. He wrote the some of the art policy for Dave Barrett's NDP government in the early 70s. He had sort of political clout as well as an artistic presence in the city.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but that, yes, as you say, it was a long time ago.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, maybe we're just so accustomed now to men behaving badly, and that it's not really
Mm-hmm.
news. But
Mm-hmm.
but I do want to say, for those who are watching, that's really not what this book is about at all. It's really the storytelling in it is so captivating. I mean, every time I pick it up and I turn it to a page and start reading, it's very hard to put down because the storytelling is so engaging, and it really is, about you and about the yourself then and yourself now, and the dialogue between the two in a way that I've never seen done before in literature. So
Well,
yeah.
it seemed like it was time to do that,
Mm-hmm.
to take it on and to reconcile myself with that younger self. I wouldn't say I've lived, you know, a difficult life because of it. I mean, I have a wonderful life in most ways, but it was a darkness. Someone at a reading I did last night at the Gibson's Library said to me, it feels like there are ghosts in this story. And she wrote to me too today saying she'd read half of it last night and she was even more convinced that it was a kind of haunting. The story was a kind of haunting in my life. And I think she's right. It's not all it is, but I think she's right. So to have the opportunity to revisit it and revisit my younger self and console her and, give her a chance to talk about her own feelings about it. Because the response when this was going on from my friends was that mm, they sort of expected it of me, I think. They sort of expected that I was maybe colorful and a little bit risky. And so if I did this, no one else would have to. They could live vicariously through it, which is maybe the way some friendships are when you're in your 20s, that there's always a kind of um, unequal um, force field that you live within, and sometimes some unhealthy competitiveness too. And I think maybe there was some of that going on. If I could be the risky one who lived a little bit dangerously, other people could enjoy that but not have to do it themselves.
Right.
And I certainly didn't set out to do that, but It was a circumstance I found myself in and didn't know how to extricate myself.
Yeah.
Maybe I didn't want to for some of it. I mean, if I'm honest, to have somebody so enthralled, you know, it was terrifying in some ways. And it was also flattering to a person, a young person.
Yeah.
It's part of the, I think, that man's ability to manipulate,
Part of grooming is making someone feel special, a big part of it.
Of course.
So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. I do appreciate just how kind you are to your past self, but not just to your past self, to really to everyone in the book. Even I think, including Jack. I mean, you don't make excuses for him by any means, but there's a gentleness towards everyone in this story that I really appreciate in this book.
Well, things are never simple, are they? I mean, a person can manipulate and, impose a sort of obsessive interest on you, but they can also have other qualities. And he was charming. He was generous. I learned a lot about painting and painters. I learned a lot about art. We had long, long discussions about art. There was no one in my life that I was talking about art with. I'd been to Europe maybe 2 years earlier on my own and went to many galleries. I lived in London for about 3 months, and I think it was Mondays that the galleries were free. And so I worked there, and I'd take Mondays off and I'd go down to the Tate or the National Gallery or the Portrait Gallery and just look at art. And I didn't really have anyone to talk to about it. I'm not a painter myself, but I'm very drawn to visual art. And it was so gratifying, actually, to have my interests and my ideas taken seriously. So I can't regret that. Mm-hmm. Even though I regret other things, I can't regret that.
Yeah. This is also, it's not common for us to get this kind of a story. I mean, earlier toward the beginning, you mentioned it being sort of a Me Too story, which it is, but this element of being able to go back. And I think, of course, having the letters really created allowed, maybe forced, I don't know, to relive it in a way that otherwise wouldn't have happened. But, for a much older, a person who's at a much later stage in their life, to be able to go back and revisit an experience or a relationship in this way, I don't feel like that's a story that we often get to see in literature.
Well, the few that I've read that I've really been entranced with have been Celia Paul, she's mentioned in my book, the lover of Lucian Freud when she was a young art student, and his model for a number of paintings. And she went on to become, one of my favorite painters. She's a beautiful painter and still at work in London, probably a little younger than me, maybe. Anyway, so she has that opportunity in her book, her memoir, and then she has another book, Letters to Gwen John, in which she imagines the opportunity to write to Gwen John, I think probably a much neglected painter, British painter, the sister of Augustus John, and just beautiful, became the lover of Rodin, and I think he probably suppressed her ability to put her work forward. I think he probably kept her a little bit submissive. And So when I find these books, I'm very interested in them. But I don't think there are that many. So if mine contributes to the corpus, I'm delighted.
Yeah, I was also, this is much more modern, but I was thinking of Monica Lewinsky's work in, I think it's in Vogue that she was writing in about, reevaluating her experiences in the White House was another one that came to mind for me.
Yeah, certainly her story has echoes, doesn't it?
Yeah. And also watching her sort of in real time reevaluate, especially over, as during the Me Too discussions, go from what she had seen as a consensual love affair, essentially, to it actually a thing where she was exploited and she believes her consent was compromised because of
and
her.
vilified. A young woman, a young, intelligent woman, vilified for engaging in a consensual relationship. I mean, there would have been that power imbalance, I suppose, but still, I mean, we can't judge that really. We two people are drawn together, they're drawn together. And yeah, she certainly paid the price, didn't she? And I was delighted to see her kind of reclaim her sense of importance,
Yeah. And she has actually, complicated the story of, she has since acknowledged that the question of consent was much more complicated than she initially really wanted to look at.
Well, wouldn't it be? Wouldn't it be?
Yeah. Yeah. We have a comment here from Kirsten Boyle. Reminds me of the Leaving Season by Kelly McMasters about her separation from her painter husband. I'm not familiar
I don't
with
know that one, but I'll look for it. Yeah.
If anyone else would like to ask a question or leave a comment, we can see them. Whatever platform you're watching on, feel free to leave a comment.
I realize I'm not seeing the comments. Oh, now I see it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Good.
Yeah. So is there anything that you want to say about this book that that I haven't asked, that you wish I'd asked about, or that you want our viewers to know about it?
Oh gosh. Well, come for the the drama and stay for the art. There are reproductions throughout, and it's a beautiful design. I love how it was Jeff that did page design. Yeah, they're beautiful. The way they have their own sort of discrete place in the book as elements of the story, and so
when you said
sorry.
When you said stay for the art, I assumed you meant your writing, which is also art.
Oh, well, thank you. I mean, hope that's what I do, something needs to be done, and I write about it. That's always been my my pleasure and sort of my well, it's a burden sometimes, I remember years ago being in the Okanagan, and I sometimes write historical novels set mostly in periods of BC history. And we were at a place called Shorts Point on the west side of Okanagan Lake. And there'd been a settlement there, a farm settlement, and a beautiful multi-sided barn and a house built of field stone. And as we approached the house, a woman came out in period costume and she said, "Would you like a tour?" And I said, "No." And my husband said, "What do you mean, no? You love these places." And I said, "If I go into that house, it's the next 5 years of my life. I won't be able to not write about it." So, yeah. So a pleasure and a privilege, but also sometimes a little bit of a burden.
Yeah. So you are going to be speaking in a few places around BC in the next couple of weeks. Do you want to give us a rundown of where you're going to be?
So Monroe's bookstore in Victoria on June
You don't have to
3rd.
list the
I
dates.
think it's June 3rd
Mhm.
at 7:00. And with Kiko Honda, who's written a beautiful memoir called Hidden Flowers. And then Volume 1 bookstore in Duncan on Saturday, June 6th, and Upstart and Crow in Vancouver on June 12th. And also there was a podcast a week or two ago. Joe planned to cite the commentary that's easily accessible. And I've been invited to quite a few book clubs. And if you have a book club and you want to read this book and you'd like me to zoom in or visit in person, if that's possible, I'd love to do that. So just, I have a website, myname.com, and contact me and ask. I'd love it.
That was going to be my next question. I will mention, so Theresa's book is on our website, thornapplepress.ca. And if you go to our books and scroll down, her book is right there. It's got links to buy the book, links to review it, and links to all of these events that were just mentioned if you want to find those. And you can also send us an email, press@thornapplepress.ca, and we can direct it to Theresa as well.
I forgot too that there's an event tomorrow afternoon at the Seashell Library at
Okay, yeah.
1:00. Yeah, with Kate.
Great. Yeah, and so you mentioned your website. Is there any place else people can find you?
I'm on Instagram and I'm on Blue Sky. I'm not on Facebook. And so that's about it. Yeah.
And what's next for you after this? Do you have any projects on the go?
Well, it's something completely different. I'm returning to university next year to do the graduate liberal studies program at Simon Fraser, and I want to focus on the whole complicated area of mark making. I've been visiting Paleolithic art sites in the last couple of years in the Dordogne Valley in France, and most recently in the Coa Valley in Portugal. And I'm just so drawn to this human need to make marks and to make meaning out of things that we will probably never understand. But I'm interested in the process, and I intend to look at Paleolithic art and, engage it in a more scholarly way, I suppose. So that's what's next.
Great, that's really exciting.
It is
on the
exciting.
subject of mark making, congratulations on your 17th book.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, very impressive number that I don't think I will reach in my lifetime. Which officially pubs tomorrow and is available now if folks want to get it. Yeah, very, very excited to see this out in the world. Any closing thoughts that you want to add before we go?
No, just to say that it's been a privilege to work with Thornapple, and I'm really delighted to see what happens. People have been writing already. It's in some bookstores, and people have been writing, and it's so gratifying. I mean, you always, when you're on the threshold of the book being published, you're always a little bit, it's mysterious. Will people understand what I meant? Will this speak to other people? And it seems so far that it is doing that. And so that's so gratifying.
Yeah. Good. Well, it's been a pleasure working with you, and we're very happy to have this book as part of our program. So thank you for finding us.
To all of you.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to sign off now. Goodbye
Okay.
to all our viewers.